Kliff Kingsbury is out as the Arizona Cardinals head coach. The Cardinals obviously had a disastrous season, after they tailed off at the end of last year. Kind of always felt like this was going to be on the horizon considering the trajectory their year had taken, even though both him and Steve Keim, who's also been fired, were given contract extensions through 2027, I believe 10 months ago. So this is an organization that is a little tangled up right now. And I think that they're going to have a long way to get out of this with their new head coach, with their new GM, and with whatever direction they take from here.
Absolutely. And they're completely committed contractually to Kyler Murray. So that's where you start. You have to try to make good on that investment. This is not a situation where you're going to move on from him even in a year. So you have to find the best person you can to unlock him or help him. And the problem is that there might not be a lot of people better than Kliff Kingsbury to do that. This thing had run its course and you needed to have the change, but you need somebody to pair with Kyler Murray and help him out. So is it another offensive head coach? There's certainly been some buzz over the weekend that they could just promote Vance Joseph to the head coaching job, which would probably not be the most expensive route you could take, and then bring in an offensive coach and just sort of move on that way. They have to make a GM hire too. There's internal people involved in that. So we'll see how big of a splash. I know we saw Sean Payton's name in there, that sort of thing. Not so sure.
So Sean Payton is the name that I think it's worth exploring to kind of get a sense of where things are with that organization. Sean Payton has said multiple times, the most important factors for him as to where he'll land are organizational stability and the state of the front office, just the people in charge and how good he feels about the people in charge. So through that lens, if we're looking at this Arizona job, based on the conversations that you've had for an in-demand candidate like a Sean Payton or like somebody else, what do you think their view of the front office and the stability in Arizona is like right now?
Well, their view could be a little different than lesser candidates' view, meaning less prominent, because if you're a Sean Payton, you can come in and you're going to set it up how you want. That's part of the deal. So, hey, these guys in the front office, no, I would like to, find a general manager type to pair with me, and then we move from there. That's part of doing business. If I'm on that level of Sean Payton, and we see that play out with some of the really big name head coaches. I have talked to some people that are in that world of personnel and, are looking at that, and their concern coming into there is, hey, love Adrian Wilson, love Quentin Harris, but are those guys, am I going to have to keep them as my assistant GMs? Do they have the owner's ear? Those would be the sorts of things to consider if you were, I think, at a lower level than a Sean Payton. Hopefully for Sean Payton, he could set that up, clear it up, and make that be conditional on his employment.
Adrian Wilson is the vice president of pro scouting for the Cardinals. Obviously a Cardinals legend, play there for almost his entire career. I think he had a stint with the Bears and the Patriots, maybe later in his career. Man, but he was a legend in Arizona. Yeah. He was a fantastic player. I loved watching him. And that kind of speaks to the dynamic there a little bit. Steve Keim worked for the Cardinals for 20 years. Yep. He was there for multiple decades, and that is a family-run business. The Bidwells have had that team for a very long time. Based on what I understand, they do things a certain way, and it is a little bit insular and mom and pop feeling sometimes. So I wonder how that will ultimately dictate the search, who they can get, who they can coax there, all of those things.
The comfort level with the owner is obviously huge to the owners because there were multiple opportunities on performance. There were ups and downs during the Steve Keim era. They easily could have moved on a couple of times. He hired 3 coaches. Yeah, hired 3 coaches. He had an off the field incident that was pretty embarrassing, and with an extreme DUI. So there were moments when you easily could have changed course, but that comfort that the owner feels is really important to the owner, and it really drives a lot of the decision making. These places don't always just open it up and interview for the best candidate. The best candidate is who they're comfortable with. So is that going to now default to an Adrian Wilson, who, like you said, is a Cardinals legend in their Ring of Honor? Is that who is going to have that type of rapport? One thing I was talking to someone over the weekend about Arizona, and they said, hey, if you watch the most recent Hard Knocks, they really made a big deal of Vance Joseph and how respected he is in the building. And it was almost like they were setting that up to go that route. And it's funny, I think I was, before we came on the show, I was checking, Schefter's Twitter and Rappaport's Twitter. I think there was something on Rappaport's, hey, Vance Joseph, really well thought of in that building, which is dovetails with that. And so I just heard that from multiple people that they could go in that direction.
Vance Joseph is an impressive person. I would be surprised if people were interested in Vance Joseph as a defensive coordinator if he was a candidate for that job. It just feels like that's a half measure when this team really needs to take a long look at everything about its operation.
Yeah, I think one of the things that intrigues me about a Vance Joseph, or even like a Steve Wilks, their former coach now, is the second time around. I think the job is so overwhelming, and you're not prepared for that job. Some guys can just do it, or maybe you have a good quarterback, or you have a great support, a great schemer, on the other side of the ball who helps you out. But I think the head coaching jobs are hard and overwhelming, and when you get those jobs in bad spots and you don't have a chance, whether that was Steve Wilks in Arizona with Josh Rosen. Vance Joseph in his situation, not having a good quarterback, maybe not getting exactly the staff right, or whatever it was in Denver.
He only had 2 years in Denver as well.
Yeah,
I mean, it was not.
But when you get a second chance, I think that does intrigue me. How much better are you? I would love to sit down with him if I was Mike Bidwell and just learn about that. Hey, what would you do? What do you believe? What did you get wrong? And I think through those types of conversations, you might get a sense for the growth of the coach.
I went to Arizona last year and wrote about Vance Joseph and about the Cardinals defense just because they were outperforming expectations again. And I spent a couple of days down there and talked to him for a while. And one quote from our conversation, he said, I think every NFL coach and every college coach needs at least 3 years to have a chance to see the system work and to see the players have a chance to buy in. Culture is so important when you're trying to change something. And the only way they buy in is if you're winning and showing improvement. And you need time to do those things. So I feel like he was of the opinion that if he had a little bit more time in Denver, it might have gone a little bit differently. So we'll see what happens there. The state of the roster is not great. I think there's a reason that they're going to move on from the general manager. I think there's a reason that this team had the bottom fall out. You have a quarterback who's being paid at the top of the market, may start next season on the PUP list, potentially could miss some time with that knee injury he suffered late in the season. They have some talent offensively, but not an overwhelming amount, and not a lot of young guys that you feel like you can really build around. I mean, Marquise Brown they traded for, but DeAndre Hopkins is in his 30s. A lot of the guys that they've committed to with their skill position groups are getting a little bit older. On defense, I don't think they have many foundational pieces. This really seems like a hard reset outside of the quarterback. And you and I have discussed that. That's a weird situation. Very rarely do we have these kind of setups where you have a young quarterback being paid at the top of the market and a team that requires a total teardown around him, and you're trying to sell a coach and a general manager on that process. That kind of feels like where the Cardinals are right now.
It really does. And I think they've been, patching with veterans, right? And
yes.
and making acquisitions, and they're gonna get Rodney Hudsons, and they're gonna be in on all of those types of players. They got Hollywood Brown this year. You mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. They signed JJ Watt, right? It just Green. Feels, AJ Green. It feels so pieced together that way, as if, hey, we're close here, guys. Let's just boost it up a couple more notches here with this signing and that signing, but it doesn't feel overly sustainable. And I think then you have to figure out, okay, what is missing, and what is the owner expectation if you're going to go in there? Does he think we should be close and we just need someone that the message is going to get through and we're going to get over the top? I think the whole thing with Kyler Murray and his contract and the language in there about having to study is hard to overcome. I mean, I think it just colors this thing.